Tragedy on Mother's Day in Southampton Town. I'm Joe Shaw. This is 27 Speaks Behind the Headlines. This is the Express News Group's new podcast that reviews the news stories of the week and does a little bit of a deeper dive. I'm Joe Shaw. I'm consulting editor at the Express News Group, and I'm joined this week by four of our staff writers, Jack Motz, Cailin Riley, Mike Wright, and Michelle Trauring, who is our features editor. We're going to start this week with Mike Wright. Mike, welcome. We are kind of dealing with the fallout of this incident, which happened on Sunday, on Mother's Day of all times. This was a pretty unique situation for Southampton Town and the Southampton Town Police, right? What happened?
Yeah, just a really tragic situation all the way around. You had a woman called police at like 2:45 on Mother's Day afternoon and said that her son or one of her sons was at her house, highly intoxicated, and was, sort of acting very aggressive and menacingly towards her. Police dispatched had been there before, unfortunately, with similar incidents, and so they sent somebody. Officers were en route, and she called back and said that her son had a knife and was threatening her. And when officers arrived a few minutes later, they found her son inside the house, standing over her. He had stabbed her many, many times. Three Southampton Town police officers arrived at the house, within a few minutes of the first phone call. They didn't come in blazing. They yelled at the son. A neighbor, sort of recounted it to one of the reporters at the scene. They yelled at him to drop the knife. He sort of turned his attention to them. He did not throw down the knife. He started walking toward them, which, as we all know, in a lot of situations would have gotten him shot on the spot. But the officers, as the Southampton Town Chief of Police James Kiernan said, the officers backed away from him as he came at him, which both kind of de-escalates the situation. And, they were trying to get him away from his mother, who is lying on the ground, gravely wounded, obviously. And so he started walking toward them. And then they said that just all of a sudden he just turned away from them and went back and started stabbing her again. And,
My goodness.
And so, faced with sort of, a deadly assault right in front of them, the officers shot him multiple times. The police have not said. There were three officers there. The police have not said if all three of them shot, how many times they shot. They did say that more than one officer fired their gun. I don't know. We don't know how many shots were fired, how many times he was hit, etc. But he was killed.
And
what
was the gentleman's name?
Stephen Eastwood is the son's name. He's a 28-year-old. It's the house that he grew up in, and he had lived there at least off and on over the last 10 years, right? Since he graduated from high school, presumably. The police said they did not know if he was living there at the time or if he was just there. It was Mother's Day. There was nobody else in the house, so we don't know what the circumstances had been that day. My understanding is that he has siblings, he was killed, and it appears to have been the first time in the history of the Southampton Town Police Department that one of their officers has shot and killed somebody. And I spoke to the East Hampton Town Police Chief, who said that he also doesn't think that one of their officers has ever shot and killed somebody. So I mean, the first time that a police officer on the South Fork has ever shot
Which
somebody.
is pretty remarkable when you think about it, but I mean, it demonstrates just how unusual a situation this one really was.
Yeah, yeah, it's really just horribly sad. The mother did survive. I haven't heard an update of her condition. They airlifted her to Stony Brook. Kiernan said that she was stabbed or slashed more than 40 times.
Which is pretty remarkable that
Yeah,
she survived that attack, and
yeah,
really, I think we have to say that the actions of the police officers probably saved her. If she comes through this,
yeah.
their actions really did save her life in this case, so,
Yeah,
in
yeah, it's a really tragic tragic situation. It's a family house, and in a quaint little neighborhood right by Wildwood Lake, really beautiful street actually. I talked to a bunch of neighbors on the street, a lot of whom, the immediate neighbors, the police weren't letting us talk to, but some people up the street, not that they knew everybody, but they were just stunned
mm.
by what had happened. And it's kind of one of those things you would never think it would happen here. And but
Did
yeah, like Kiernan said, he said that they've been called to that house several times over the years with issues between Stephen and his mother, or Stephen anyway. So I have a feeling that we'll find out more about the history here in the coming days. It's not going to be a good tale. I mean, it's great that she survived, thankfully,
absolutely.
but yeah, it's a sad situation that's going to linger, I'm sure, for a long time. And the officers too. That is a traumatic situation, certainly. Uh,
Did Kiernan address that? What
he
the
he did
department
he
does for
did
the
he
officers?
did somewhat. Yeah, the officers were taken to the hospital for an evaluation immediately afterwards, and he said that they are receiving trauma counseling, which we know that our officers out here, it doesn't get talked about a lot, but our officers out here go through that a lot, because I mean, it's not just something like this. Obviously this is unique, literally. But police officers, you hear a lot of people talk about, oh, being a cop on the South Fork, it's nothing, but they see some pretty traumatic stuff. I know a couple of officers that have seen just really awful things, especially being parents and that sort of thing. And you get car accidents. It's police officers really see some difficult stuff and have to absorb some pretty difficult stuff that
Yeah,
it's hard for anybody to process. And one of our employees' wives was a police psychologist or psychiatrist for many years, and has worked with a lot of officers that have been in traumatic situations, and they're good at it. It does make a difference. I've talked with Mayor Jerry Larson in East Hampton, who was a police officer for a long time and had received that kind of counseling, and said it's really important. And that was one of the things that he did when actually he got elected. He made it mandatory, and I think that it's mandatory in all the departments now, because it can be a really hard thing to process.
yeah, yeah.
And difficult on the police officers' families. It's a real thing.
Yeah, when you talk about a tragedy in a case like this, we forget about the impact on the officers. And in this case, it's kind of a relief to know that it's, by all accounts, the officers really did act with a great deal of restraint. And you worry about the impact of something like this on them as well. So thanks
Yeah.
for your reporting on this, Mike. And I'm sure we're going to continue to try and find out as much as we can about what happened there. Uh, let's switch over to Jack Motz, who is our East Hampton reporter. Hey, Jack.
Hey, Joe.
Good to have you. So there were public hearings this week on a proposal in East Hampton Town. This is kind of interesting to me because it would tie together a person's employment and their housing, and it's an idea to try and create some more affordable housing by, allowing employers to find the housing. Talk a little bit about what the proposal actually is in East Hampton Town.
So basically, what we have here is it's a code change, but it's got very direct implications for something else that's going on in town, right? So the code change is basically kind of enumerating the standards of employer-owned housing developments. And sort of the fundamental idea here is they would be pretty decentralized, right? And, it's also worth mentioning that this is something that is, not exactly unique in that, these sorts of things happen in a more under the radar capacity. But really
Mhm.
what's at play here is the scale of this code change. So really what's going on is Kirby Marcantonio, he's a private developer and he wants to put up a 47 unit complex on Pantego Road in kind of between East Hampton Village and Amagansett. And really what this code change was do was make that possible because, with the standards that it would establish, the two places that it would be allowed are in an affordable housing overlay and a limited business overlay. So there are two places in town that, currently allow that. One of them is already developed in Gansett Meadow and Amagansett, and that's not going anywhere. And the other is Kirby's development. So
So
this
this is
code change
really
is really,
sort of about this project to some degree,
it is.
whether
And the
by
two
design or
have,
not.
yeah, exactly. So the two are, pretty tightly linked together, even if it's not, directly about it. And there is some conversation about, maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but there is some conversation about maybe expanding it by taking off that limited business district overlay in the future. That would be way down the future, and it's not like this thing is still kind of working its way through approvals and all that, so it's not even there yet. But basically, these complexes would be kind of decentralized, right? So like one business could buy, 10 units here, another one would buy 5 units there, right? And so part of the problem with that, town officials were looking at is, who is kind of the person that you go to if there's some abuses, right? I mean, there's no like, what do you go to your employer? I mean, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap here and it's also, I think, the people who have voiced concerns are concerned that if you lose your job, you're also going to lose your housing. That's part of how this would be set up, right?
Right. So kind of like the two big pieces, I would say, besides all the normal stuff about income caps and, following New York State tenant laws, kind of the two big pieces would be that grace period of 6 months that you were talking about. So if you lose your employment, you would either have until the end of the lease or 6 months to, vacate. And the other one is that they're going to be required to bring in like a third party management company to, kind of oversee what's going on in these developments. Right. So again, you don't have, here's an employer with 10 units here, here's one with 7 units here. They're all going to be kind of ultimately under the purview of, a third party management company.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and, just to kind of get at the public hearing, what you're kind of hearing is just this sort of fundamental like uneasiness about tying employment to housing. And even if there are these protections, there were some pretty high powered voices that came out and were like, I don't know if this is such a good idea, right? Katie Casey wasn't planning on talking at the public hearing, but she got up and she said,
She's with the housing
the
authority, right?
yeah, exactly. The more I hear about this, the less it kind of feels like affordable housing to me.
Mm.
Yeah, she said that specifically in response to what they were looking at, what Kirby's people were looking at, the developer behind the Pantego Road project, what they were looking at is sort of like having an income exemption for certain, critical roles and stuff like that, so that they wouldn't be subject to that 130% cap on tenant income. And
Mhm.
that's what kind of, I think the way she put it was there was a little bell in her head that started to ring when she heard
So
that. Um,
suddenly now the idea being that maybe some of these apartments would go to police officers or people who work at the hospital, but those are not necessarily low-paying jobs anymore. It
Yeah,
changes
that would
the
be the
equation a
thinking
little bit.
behind the income exemption. Like
Yeah,
whether Katie Casey is right or not, that's kind of, a different story, I think. But that's what they would be thinking by, having this income exemption, that certain jobs, might not qualify for affordable housing despite being, critical roles that people fill.
gotcha. Do you have
So
any impression of what the town board's position on it is at the moment? Are they
so when it came, originally, they were pretty wholeheartedly behind this. Like there has been some skepticism in the past over again just these fundamental issues that kind of caused some uneasiness. But when it came forward, about a month or two ago, they were pretty wholeheartedly behind it. That said, people have come out. Katie Casey came out, Sam Kramer, a former planning board chair, to kind of question this. So it'll come back for board discussion probably in the next few weeks, to talk about, what they're gonna do going forward.
I'll tell you, the battle to create more affordable housing is happening all over the place. So I'm sure we'll circle back and talk about this in
Yeah,
the coming
absolutely. It's a
coming
really
weeks.
interesting question.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Let's turn to Cailin Riley, one of our staff writers. Hey, Cailin, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Joe?
Good to have you here as always. So you had a story this week in the Sag Harbor Express about Nancy Remkus, and she received kind of a big deal at the Suffolk County level. Talk a little bit about the award she got.
Yeah, well, this story was just so nice to write. I have known Nancy, well, 40 years, I guess, because I went to Sag Harbor Elementary School and she taught there for more than 30 years. And let me tell you, she was the teacher everyone wanted to have because anyone who knows her knows she is just so kind, and her whole aura and way of being is so peaceful and lovely and wonderful. She played the guitar in class all the time, so that was really cool. But she recently was recognized by Suffolk County legislator Ann Welker as a champion of diversity. So this is a really nice recognition that the legislators give to people in their area. This is District 2 in Suffolk County that are deserving. And anyone who knows Nancy knows that she is certainly deserving. In addition to the fact that she was an elementary school teacher for many, many years, she's also an interfaith minister, and she's been at the Old Whalers Presbyterian Church for around 5 years now. Technically, the church is still looking for a permanent Presbyterian minister, but I think, in the community, her presence there has been really, really important for people in terms of bringing people together.
Mhm.
So this
It
week, I interviewed her to kind of get a little background on her and on this award.
It fits perfectly in the sense that the things you talked about, as far as diversity, she really her various efforts are always about diversity, right? She's talking all the time, and I mean, her interfaith services are about bringing together uh, different religions. You talked about her having the guitar in class, and even that, like at the school, you wrote in the story about the songs she sang were about diversity and bringing people together. This really does fit her like a glove, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, she created the morning program at Sag Harbor Elementary School, and that program has become wildly popular
Talk
and
about what that
really
is.
so the morning program, which started when I was in elementary school a million years ago, they start the day at Sag Harbor Elementary School with all the classes and students gathering in the gymnasium. Now, it's been a while since I've been to the morning program, but the way it was, I don't think it's changed much, but the way it was when I was there was the students would gather there, and the day would start with just all sitting together and singing, like a big sing along,
Hmm.
basically. And so it's kind of, and the parents are invited to be there as well. So it's kind of a nice way to ease into the school day, a chance for parents, if they can or so choose, to kind of connect with the kids. I mean, there have been people that have moved into Sag Harbor specifically because of the morning program, which seems crazy, but I think it kind of tells you about the ethos of the whole school. So
Mhm.
people really like that, and that's Nancy's legacy. I mean, the songs that we would sing when I was a kid, I didn't really understand, but we would sing If I Had a Hammer or Blowing in the Wind. I mean, we sang this song, the Goodnight Song, which I'm not gonna sing it, but I like it's burned in my brain, and it's the how to say goodnight in so many different languages, and there's a refrain in the song about no matter where you rest your head tonight, we're all one family. So
Hmm,
she's been kind of doing this work in various capacities for a long time.
got it. Good, well-deserved award then for Nancy Remkes.
But I think,
Congratulations to her. Great
yeah,
story.
one
Go
more
go
thing
ahead.
I want to say that I think is important to note is when I wrote this story, I kind of wanted to get into her personally, why this mattered to her. And, she grew up in the Catholic faith, and it was very important to her. And she went, for some extensive training as a lay person to be more involved in the church. And when she finished that, she wanted to move on to the next level, but she was not allowed to because she's a woman. But I think that kind of took her on a journey towards the interfaith work and the idea of diversity. So it has a personal meaning for her as well.
It's great. And I think your story, which is available at 27east.com, is a good read. People should seek it out and read it. Thanks, Cailin. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
So at the end of the podcast, we like to do something we call Silver Linings, which is a little bit of a lighter story. And I bring in our feature editor, Michelle Trauring. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, Joe.
Great to have you here. And you wrote this week in the residence section, which you edit, about a local painter. And I want to talk about this story because it's funny because we're always talking about the website and the print products and back and forth. I feel like this is one that really benefits from being in the print edition because the pictures she painted are really lovely. And she talk about what this story is about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had never heard of Barbara before, despite covering the arts on the East End for a long time. And she reached out to me after she saw a massive sale that was in the residence section a few months ago. It was for $72 million, which this early in the year is unusual. It All of our eyes kind of popped out of our heads when we saw
Mhm.
this number. And so just like us, she was shocked by the number, but then she looked a little bit closer at the photos and the description of the house. And it mentioned these specimen beech trees. And she thought to herself, I know these trees. I have seen them in person. I have photographed them and I have painted them. And so she immediately reached out to me and she said, Hi, you might be curious to see this painting of mine of these beech trees that you mentioned. I actually paint all of these homes across the East End. And I said, Oh my gosh, we must speak. We must chat. I absolutely want to write a story about you.
And
So
that's Barbara. What is her last name?
Barbara Thomas.
Barbara Thomas, and she has been doing this for like 40 years, right?
She has. It started from basically the second she moved out to the East End in the 1980s. Uh, she had a show as an artist at the Elaine Benson Gallery, which was a longtime institution in Bridgehampton. And a man came in who was the co-founder of a very big private equity firm, then and now, called Blackstone. His name is Peter Peterson. And he saw her work and said, uh, I love this. I want you to come paint my home. And so she went to his estate in Watermill and painted a gorgeous painting and actually reproduced it in watercolor for his office. And so when people were coming and going from his home and from his office, they looked at these paintings and said, you know, who did this? And that launched her career.
That's amazing. It's almost like a little history of the residential community out here. A lot of the big houses, but a lot of also fairly modest houses she's painted, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, she's driven around the East End. She's painted farms and farmhouses to modern and back to traditional. And it really became this study in architecture that she didn't expect when she first started doing these commissions. In recent years, she's kind of tended more toward abstraction, which is currently on view at the Sarah Nightingale Gallery in Sag Harbor through the end of May.
So it's interesting because her works are being collected in one place for at least for this show, but I'm guessing most of her work is in various houses all over. The folks that commissioned her to paint them, her work is actually out in the community all over the place.
It is. They are hanging on the walls of the homes that are in the paintings, which is kind
Yeah.
of a funny irony.
Yeah, it is. But this is kind of a rare chance to see some of them all together then at the gallery. So that's great stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Good
it is.
story, Michelle. I like how when we write about the local real estate industry, we branch out a little bit every once in a while and do something lighter now and then. And the story about Barbara's paintings was a really good one. It is available, as always, at 27east.com. That's true of all the stories we talked about today. I want to thank Jack Motz, Mike Wright, Cailin Riley, and Michelle Trauring for being with me today. I'm Joe Shaw. Thank you. We'll be back next week with another edition of 27 Speaks Behind the Headlines.